Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everybody watching. This is Khoisan Talks. My name is Sabecha. I'm a Khoisan girl from Southern Africa, particularly Cape Town. And on this channel, we talk everything Khoisan. Khoisan spirituality, Khoisan history, our social, political, and ethnic struggles, and also our successes. Today, I wish to talk about this word Afrikaans and Afrikaner. As a native Southern African, so many things have been taken away from us. Our languages, our cultures, tradition, our spiritual beliefs. Just as a whole, we've lost all our identity, our collective identities. I always like to tell people the one thing that the Europeans did that benefited us was the documentation of everything. And so today I want to talk about the Orlam people, or as the Dutch called us, Orlamse Hottentotte, which is a name that, although they perceived it to be a negative stereotype, being Orlams meaning you are stubborn, meaning you are headstrong. I feel such pride when I always hear the stories of the Orlams, which is a group of people from the Cape Colony, where I'm from, particularly, not exclusively, who broke away from the Cape Colony after colonization of the Dutch and traveled all the way up into what is now presently known as Namibia. Past history, we know that we had no borders in Southern Africa. If there is to be a border, one could say the border is Zambia, or the Zambezi River became a border, putting us in two separate ethnic groups, if one can put it that way, where Zambia, Angola, and further north, it would be a different tribe, it would be a different ethnic group. But from the Zambezi River right down to the two oceans, the Cape of Good Hope, from Namibia to Botswana to South Africa, current day, these were all native lands. So we must remember that before the colonizers came, even in modern day history, Namibia is only 34 years old. So Namibia is even an invention of colonization, quite a new invention of colonization. Like I said, this country was only, or this piece of land from our lands was only subdivided about 34 years ago and is now presently known as Namibia. But the Orlams, or the Orlams, Gorikwa, traveled or broke free. A group of our people broke free and started traveling to the north, particularly southwest, I should say, and established Namibia. Now, the leader of the Orlams, this particular group that broke free, his name was Ouderam. And he started calling us Afrikaners. As a matter of fact, because he started calling us Afrikaners in the sense of we are African, they dubbed the surname Ouram or Ouderam, Old Ram, Afrikaner. And so also the language that we spoke was dubbed Afrikaans, because this is the language that the indigenous natives, Ouderam's people, spoke. The Griquas, the Gorikwas, the Hesekwas, Otenikwas. currently known as coloured in Southern Africa, Namibia and South Africa. We are known as coloureds now. But he called us, or he dubbed us, Afrikaners. And when Oderam died, let me just get the dates here so that I don't get confused with the dates. But when Oderam died in South Africa, his son, Klaas Afrikaner, then traveled all the way into what is now known as Namibia. And they were the first native Khoi coloureds to settle in Namibia. As a matter of fact, they established the city that is now currently known as Windhoek. And there they met the few of Nama tribes and they integrated with the Nama tribes. The interesting part is when they tell the history of the coloured that is some type of mix with European and Indonesian and Malaysian. But when we trace the history of the Orlams or the Griquas, or now currently known as the coloureds, there's no integration of European descent. As a matter of fact, they were called Oorlamse Hottentotte just because they fought European colonialism so much and everything that stood with European colonialism. So this word Afrikaans and Afrikaner, the original people, is the coloured person. And that name, like all our identities, was stolen. And so now, in current, present day, modern day, the white Europeans, specifically from the Netherlands, call themselves Afrikaners. When this term was dubbed by Oderam, Afrikaner, and the language Afrikaans was spoken by his people, which is us, the coloureds of South Africa, and now current day Namibia. So it's always so interesting to me when I read this, the history books, especially the history that they teach within our schools of who the Afrikaner is and what language Afrikaans is and who the people are that are now the Afrikaners. Like everything, another identity was stolen. The Afrikaner is the coloured, the original. And so are these descendants, which is now currently called the coloured. Klaas, his son, Klaas Afrikaner, like I said, then established a colony in current day Namibia, which is now called Windhoek. And at the present moment, when you visit Namibia, especially Windhoek, I am currently in Windhoek. I travel back and forth, like most of you know. There is this pushback of our language, which is Afrikaans, which is it's a native language. It is not a language of the Dutch. It is not a language of the Netherlands. It is a language that was developed long before Jan van Riebeeck ever came into power. Before Jan van Riebeeck came into power, for 300 years, the Khoikhoi or the Hugu traded with Portuguese, French, Spanish. We were the pit stop, so to say, for the Europeans or the colonialists travel from Europe all the way around into India. And so when they came to the Cape of Good Hope, they could stop for refreshments, water, fresh water, as we have an abundance of everything. And they also stopped for herbs, which helped him. So our herbs are medicinal. Most of our herbs is medicinal. And so they stopped for medicinal herbs. So we had to develop a language in order to speak with all these visitors that came to our shores. And so Afrikaans was, the language was developed. It is a native language. And so are the people who speak it, now currently known as coloured. Thank you for everybody who's tuning in, who's watching. And so this weekend I had a meeting or sit down with a few Namibians, particularly Windhoek, and they had no idea because there's an identity crisis currently happening. Not currently, there has been an identity crisis happening within our native people. Who are we? What are we? So many lies have been told. And one particular lie that was told is about the pastor of Namibia. When Orlam descendants came here, Klaas, Jonker Afrikaner is another descendant. So when you look at the line, you can see how the line goes from Oudram Afrikaner to Klaas Afrikaner to Jonker Afrikaner to Jan Jonker Afrikaner, who then married a Witbooi. And Hendrik Witbooi is a direct descendant of Oudram Afrikaner. And the Witbois, or those who identify within our nation as being descendants of Witbooi, now call themselves pastors. And pastors meaning a mix of different, but particularly German, those who have German ancestry. The interesting part is that I met a young lady who remembers, now most don't remember who these German ancestors are. Sometimes they carry the name like Jooster or Van der Merwe, but they don't have first-hand knowledge of who these ancestors are. But I met a lady in Windhoek who knew her grandfather, and they had knowledge of her great-grandfather too. And the story that was told was quite disturbing, but also familiar. So when the British decided, when Europe decided that slavery was no longer, they couldn't practice slavery anymore, these colonialists in Africa found another way to make us slaves, the native Khoi and San. So what they did was they would marry a girl of Orlam or Nama, Griqua, Afrikaner descent, make her their wives, and then have children with them. 7, 8, 9. I've met a family who had 15 children. The lady that I'm speaking to, this is now her great-grandfather, a German colonialist who married her great-grandmother and had 15 children. And by the age of 8, all these children had to go work on their farms. Free labor. Slavery. This was not a marriage of love, but a marriage of convenience. As a matter of fact, when the story is told, it is told that the German great-grandfather never slept in the same bed as his wife, never ate from the same plates as his children. As a matter of fact, his clothes and dishes and everything had to be washed separately from his children and his wives. So they found a way to make us slaves and to still be socially acceptable by law. This young lady that I was speaking to, her grandmother was then traded to her great-grandfather's friend, who are now Joosters. And so at the age of 14, her grandmother was married off to her great-grandfather's friend, a German doctor, who then had 9 children. And the same pattern happens. They cannot eat out of the same plate, drink out of the same cup, sit at the same table. As a matter of fact, one of the descendants, the granddaughter of this German doctor, tells the story of her grandmother telling her that when they visited their father, or when they would visit their father at his practice, he was a doctor, he would sometimes give them sweets out of the window. And at the age of 8 years old, her grandmother too had to go work on the farm. She said she never understood why her grandmother, she always had to rub her grandmother's feet and the calluses. And one day she asked the grandmother, why your feet all the time? And she says she remembers how hard it was to work on her father's farm. And so did her siblings. And this is how the Busters, some came to be. It was not a marriage of love. It was a form of slavitude, servitude. And so this Buster identity, although they are so proud of this identity, it was the reason why their ancestor, Odoram, broke free from the Cape Colony, so that his descendants would not have to live as the Busters lived. It is interesting, the irony, to travel all the way from the Cape of Good Hope, end up in Windhoek, 1,600 kilometers away from the Dutch, just to encounter the Germans. And so this Buster identity is an identity that I find quite disturbing, as is the colored identity. It is a colonial identity. It is an identity that puts us back in slavitude and servitude. And so when I meet the Busters, and when I talk to the Busters, they call themselves Busters, I tell them, you are not, this identity is almost an admission, almost giving the slave owners, these Germans, a free pass, get out of jail free card. No, we must say what happened to us. That our grandmothers and our great-grandmothers were not married for love or community or family. They were married because it was out of convenience, because it was another way so that they can practice their slave they can practice slavery on us. So in essence, the Odoram, the Orlams, or the Orlamse Hottentotte, as they called us, married the Namas, who was in now currently known Karasburg, Marienthal, Gruno. They married the Griquas that came from the Cape, and then were subjected to German enslavement. And most of them are now in Rieber. And so I tell them, you are Namas. This is your identity. This is who you are. This is our history. None of your grandfathers or your great-grandfathers or these men that did this to our women, none of them left you anything. It would be sometimes here and there, few and far in between, they would leave their wives a small piece of land. Because they stole hectares. In the Western Cape, land was stolen, yes. I've heard of 20, my family, 20 hectares was stolen, Constantia in particular, my family. 30 hectares was the most that I heard in the Western Cape. In Namibia, they stole hundreds of hectares. Entire cities they stole. And then would leave sometimes the wife with the children with 1 hectare of land, if even that much. So to the Busters of Windhoek, of Riebath, Marienthal, your history is one of slavery, servitude, but also survival. Because our women had to survive. There's strength in that, but do not be fooled and think that your German ancestry was one of love. There's no white person claiming you. I've not heard of one case where these German ancestors, these men who put these women into slavery, into servitude, and had all these children, and let these children work on the farms. I have not heard one case where they know or are even accepted or even acknowledged as the children of these German men. All they carry is the name, because they had to. They had to marry them. It was out of convenience. So to ouderam Afrikaner and class Afrikaner and young jonker Afrikaner and eventually wit boy. We are the true Afrikaners, not the Dutch. Afrikaans is our native language. We developed the language long before the Dutch. The Dutch only started using this term in the 19th century. And we already had it in the 16th century. We dubbed ourselves Afrikaners. So on that note, family, I hope that this little bit of knowledge has enlightened you and that you may be proud of your language, because there seems to be also an assault on our language, particularly in what is now known as South Africa. The infiltration of foreigner Bantu and Nguni tribes into our areas. They speak Bantu, they speak Xhosa, Zulu. And when I go to the shops and I ask, because Afrikaans is my first language, I speak it the best, I understand it the best. And I am in my community, I want to speak my language. I am looked at in disgust. And yet I am native, speaking my native language. And when I say that I'm Afrikaner, the foreigner Bantu and Nguni and the Wambus, they look at me in disgust. What do you mean you're Yes, I'm an Afrikaner. I'm the original Afrikaner. I'm the original speaker of this tongue. And the bastards. Oorlamse Hottentot. Ouderamse mense. Klaas Afrikaner. The first inhabitants of Windhoek, established Windhoek, the capital city of now present-day Namibia, who built the first roads here. You have a strong root in the land, as do all natives, wherever they are in Southern Africa. It is time that we claim our identity back and say, this is us. First Nation, Aboriginal, Khoisan, San. First among First Nations, amongst all First Nations. We are the First Nation. As proven by archaeological discoveries as well as DNA. We are of the LOD group. The oldest genetic chain on the tree of genetics is me, is us. And I am denied, and you are denied. You native. To all the bastards in Namibia, in Windhoek. You are Nama. You are Griqua. You are what is now presently known as colored. You that call yourself bastards, we understand what happened. But that does not change your lineage. That does not change your heritage. That does not change the history or the hurt. It is time that we look our history in the face what has been done to us and said, this we heal from. No more will we be pushed back. No more will we bow to all these foreigners from the Wambus, who are from Angola, Zambia. Some are even as far as Mozambique, in Southern Africa. In South Africa, the Zulus, the Xhosas. They don't even, this is what is so interesting. When I speak to them, they don't even know their own history. The foreigner Bantu Nguni tribes, they don't know that they were brought in with ships from the VOC. From the 1600s till the 1700s, until slavery ended, they don't know that they were brought in with ships. Yet it is, you can go to the archives and find this out. They play along with this colonial history that benefits them, claiming ownership and nativeship to our lands, native lands, Khoisan lands. Thank you, everybody, for coming and for listening. And like I said, I hope that you found knowledge and enlightenment, and that you may go read up on these people that I mentioned. Ouderam, Class Afrikaners, who the real Afrikaner is, who the originator of the Afrikaans language is, and stand in your identity proudly. This is who we are. First Nation, Southern African. Please don't forget to like and subscribe. Share the channel with those of like-mindedness. And tell your family and friends to tune in. Peace, love and light. Kai Gangans. Amma se Kai Gangans.